The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, shattering on the marble floor of our dining room. But the sound was nothing compared to the words that had just shattered my world. "I have an announcement to make," my husband Robert said, standing at the head of our anniversary table, surrounded by 30 of our closest friends and family members. I thought he was going to toast our 7 years of marriage. Instead, he smiled that crooked smile I once found charming and said, "My secretary Melody is 7 months pregnant with my child." The silence that followed was deafening. I sat frozen in my chair, wearing the blue dress Robert had bought me for our anniversary, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Around the table, faces stared at me with a mixture of shock, pity, and barely concealed excitement at witnessing such drama. Robert's mother, Eleanor, broke the silence with a cruel laugh. "Well, at least someone can give my son children. Unlike his barren wife who's wasted 7 years of his life." The words hit me like physical blows. Barren. That word had haunted our marriage for 3 years, ever since we started trying for children and nothing happened. Test after test showed nothing wrong with either of us, but somehow the blame always fell on me. I looked around the table at people I had considered friends. Some avoided my eyes. Others leaned forward like vultures, waiting to see how I would react. Would I scream? Cry? Beg Robert to reconsider? My sister Tanya reached for my hand, her eyes filled with tears I refused to shed. "Zara, let's go. You don't have to stay here." But I did have to stay at least for a moment longer. Because in that devastating silence, something cold and sharp crystallized in my chest. Not heartbreak that would come later. This was something else entirely. This was clarity. Robert was still talking, explaining to our guests how this happened, and how he hoped everyone would understand. His secretary Melody sat in the corner, her pregnant belly obvious now that I knew to look for it. She kept her eyes down, but there was a small smile on her lips. They had planned this. The timing, the public announcement, the humiliation, it was all calculated to break me down completely. Robert thought if he destroyed me in front of everyone who mattered, I would have no choice but to accept whatever scraps of a life he offered. He was wrong. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my dress. Every eye in the room fixed on me. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, but my voice came out steady and clear. "Thank you for letting me know, Robert. I hope you'll be very happy together." That was it. No screaming, no begging, no dramatic scene. I picked up my purse, kissed my sister's cheek, and walked to the front door. Behind me, confused murmurs started up. This wasn't the reaction they expected. "Zara, wait." Robert called after me. "We need to talk about this. About our future arrangements." I paused at the door and turned back to look at him. He stood there in his expensive suit, surrounded by the ruins of our anniversary party, looking suddenly uncertain. "What future arrangements?" I asked quietly. "You just announced you're having a baby with another woman. What exactly do you think we need to arrange?" "Well, I mean, the house, the business, custody when we have kids." "When we have kids?" I almost laughed. "Robert, you just called me barren in front of our entire family. And you're already having a child with someone else. I think our arrangement is pretty clear." Eleanor stood up, her face flushed with wine and anger. "Now you listen here, young lady. My son is being very generous, offering to keep you around after you failed to give him children. You should be grateful he's willing to work something out." "Grateful?" I repeated. The word tasted like poison in my mouth. That's when I understood. They thought this was a negotiation. They believed they held all the power because they had humiliated me publicly. They expected me to crumble, to accept being the wife who stayed while the mistress bore the children. I looked at Robert, this man I had loved and built a life with, and felt something inside me die. Not just love that had been dying slowly for months as I noticed the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way he'd grown distant. What died was the last piece of the woman who had walked into this room an hour ago. "I'll be in touch," I said simply and walked out. The cool evening air hit my face as I got into my car. Through the window, I could see the party continuing, people clustered in small groups, no doubt dissecting what had just happened. Robert stood in the doorway, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. I started the engine and drove away from the house I had called home for 7 years. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, completely, utterly free. Robert thought he had destroyed me tonight. Instead, he had set me free to become someone else entirely. Someone he was going to regret underestimating. The woman who had walked into that anniversary dinner was gone forever. The woman driving away into the night was someone new, someone dangerous, someone with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Robert wanted a war. He was about to get one. I drove aimlessly for 2 hours, my mind eerily calm as I processed what had just happened. When I finally returned home, the house was dark and empty. Robert was still at the party, probably celebrating his freedom with our guests and his pregnant secretary. I walked through rooms that suddenly felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. Wedding photos smiled down from the walls, mocking me with their happiness. The anniversary gifts we'd exchanged that morning, his watch, my earrings sat on the kitchen counter like evidence of my stupidity. But I wasn't stupid anymore. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. The same laptop where Robert paid bills, managed our joint business accounts, and apparently planned his double life. He'd left it open, confident in his control over everything in our shared world. That confidence was about to cost him everything. I started with our email accounts. We'd shared passwords for years, another sign of the trust I'd given so freely. Robert's inbox told the story of his betrayal in painful detail. Messages to Melody started 8 months ago, progressing from professional to personal to intimate. Hotel reservations. Doctor's appointments for prenatal visits. Even discussions about baby names. My hands shook as I read, but I forced myself to continue. Every email, every receipt, every photo, I copied it all to a secure folder. Robert had been careless, probably because he never expected me to fight back. The financial records were worse. Robert had been taking money from our joint construction business account for months. 20,000 here, 15,000 there, always amounts small enough not to trigger alerts, but large enough to support his pregnant mistress in style. Apartment rent for Melody. Car payments. Even a designer nursery that cost more than some people's yearly salary. He'd stolen over $100,000 from our business to fund his affair. I sat back in my chair, staring at the evidence spread across the screen. Robert hadn't just cheated on me, he'd been systematically robbing our company to pay for it. The business we'd built together from nothing, working 70-hour weeks and reinvesting every profit for 7 years. My phone buzzed. A text from Tanya. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm worried. I typed back, home. I'm fine. Can you come over tomorrow morning? I need to talk to you about something important. Of course. I'm bringing breakfast and we're burning all his clothes. Despite everything, I smiled. Tanya had always been the fierce one, ready to fight my battles when I was too gentle to fight them myself. But this battle was mine. Another text came in, this one from Robert. Zara, you're being dramatic. Come back so we can discuss this like adults. I deleted it without responding. Over the next hour, more messages arrived. You can't just walk away from 7 years of marriage. Melody doesn't mean anything to me. The baby was an accident. My mother shouldn't have said those things. I'll talk to her. We can work this out. You're overreacting. I deleted them all. At midnight, I heard Robert's car in the driveway. I quickly closed the laptop and went upstairs to our bedroom. Even thinking those words felt wrong now. Robert came in quietly, probably expecting to find me crying or packing. Instead, I was lying in bed reading a book, as calm as if nothing had happened. Zara? We need to talk. I'm tired, Robert. It's been a long day. He sat on the edge of the bed, his voice taking on the persuasive tone he used with difficult clients. Look, I know tonight was hard, but you have to understand this wasn't planned. Melody and I, it just happened. The pregnancy wasn't supposed to happen. I looked at him over my book. But it did happen. For 7 months, it's been happening. Yes, but... And you've been paying for her apartment, her car, her doctor visits, and her nursery with money from our business account. The color drained from his face. How do you? The same laptop you left open downstairs. The same email account you used to plan hotel dates while I was working late at the office. I closed my book and set it aside. The same business account where you've stolen over $100,000 to support your other life. Robert opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. It's not stealing. It's our money. Actually, it's the company's money. Money we put back into the business for expansion, for equipment, for paying our workers bonuses. Money you stole to buy your pregnant girlfriend a designer crib. He stood up, anger replacing his shock. Don't act like you're innocent in this, Zara. You think I wanted to find someone else? You think I planned this? Yes, I said simply. I think you planned exactly this. The public announcement, the timing, the way you set it up so I'd look like the pathetic wife who couldn't give you children. That's not. You wanted me broken and grateful for whatever scraps you offered. You wanted me to beg you not to leave me. I met his eyes steadily. How's that working out for you? Robert stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. You're different. You have no idea how different. He tried a different approach, his voice softening. Zara, I love you. I made mistakes, but that doesn't mean we can't fix this. Lots of couples work through affairs. Do lots of couples work through embezzlement too? Silence stretched between us. Robert ran his hands through his hair, a gesture that once seemed endearing but now just looked desperate. What do you want from me? He finally asked. Nothing, I said. I don't want anything from you anymore, Robert. That's the point. I picked up my book and opened it again. You should probably stay in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the logistics. Logistics? The divorce, the business, the criminal charges for theft. Those logistics. Robert went very still. Criminal charges? I turned a page without looking up. $800,000, Robert? That's not a mistake or a misunderstanding. That's felony embezzlement. You wouldn't. His voice was barely a whisper. I finally looked at him again and I let him see the steel in my eyes. 7 hours ago, you stood in front of our friends and family and announced you'd gotten another woman pregnant. Your mother called me barren. You both expected me to accept being humiliated and discarded. I closed the book with a sharp snap. You have no idea what I'll do. The next morning, I woke up before dawn and dressed in my most professional suit, navy blue, sharp lines, the kind of outfit that meant business. Robert was still asleep in the guest room, probably assuming he'd wake up to find his predictably emotional wife ready to negotiate her way back into his good graces. He was going to be disappointed. Tanya arrived at 7 with coffee and bagels, her face set in determined lines. Okay, I've been up all night thinking. We need to make a plan. Do you want me to call some moving companies? We can have your stuff out of here by noon. I'm not moving out, I said quietly. What? But Zara, you can't stay here with him and his pregnant. I'm not moving out because this is my house too. I've put 7 years of my life into building our business and our home. Robert's the one who chose to blow it all up, so Robert's the one who can leave. Tanya stared at me. Who are you and what did you do with my sister? The sister who let people walk all over her is gone. I handed her a cup of coffee. I need the name of the best divorce attorney in the city. Someone who specializes in complex financial cases. I know just the person. Patricia Stone. She's expensive, but she's ruthless. She handled my friend Lisa's divorce when her husband tried to hide assets in offshore accounts. Within an hour, I had an appointment for that afternoon. Patricia Stone's office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. Patricia herself was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. You said he took over $100,000 from the business account? She asked when I finished. $137,000 to be exact. I have all the records. Good. That significantly strengthens your position. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Let me be direct with you, Mrs. Sterling. Your husband clearly expected you to roll over and accept whatever arrangement he offered. The public humiliation was calculated to make you feel powerless. I nodded. That's exactly what I thought. The fact that you didn't react emotionally and instead gathered evidence shows he seriously underestimated you. We can use that. Patricia pulled out a thick folder. Now, let's talk about what you actually want from this divorce. I want him to face consequences for what he's done. And I want to make sure I'm protected financially. The business, you said you built it together? From the ground up. We started with a $20,000 loan 7 years ago. Now it's worth over $2 million with contracts booked through next year. Patricia made more notes. Any children? The familiar sting hit, but I kept my voice steady. No. We tried for 3 years, but it never happened. That actually works in your favor, legally speaking. No custody battles, no child support considerations. We can focus entirely on asset division and the embezzlement issue. Patricia looked up from her notes. About that, are you serious about pressing criminal charges? I thought about Robert's confident smile last night, the way he'd announced his betrayal like he was sharing good news. Completely serious. Good. It gives us tremendous leverage. Most judges don't look kindly on spouses who steal marital assets to support their affairs. Patricia pulled out another document. I'll need you to sign a retainer agreement and then we'll file immediately. How soon can you get me copies of all those financial records? I can email them to you this afternoon. Perfect. Now a few practical matters. Do you have somewhere safe to stay while we get this sorted out? I'm staying in the house. Robert can find somewhere else to live. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Are you sure that's wise? Things could get unpleasant. I'm sure. The house is half mine and I'm not running away. Very well. But I want you to document everything, any threats, any attempts at intimidation, anything unusual. And change all your passwords immediately. By the time I left Patricia's office, I felt like I was carrying weapons instead of legal documents. For the first time since yesterday, I felt genuinely hopeful. I drove to the construction company office, a modest building we'd bought 3 years ago when business really took off. Our secretary Helen looked surprised to see me. "Zara, I didn't expect you today. How was your anniversary dinner?" The question hit like a physical blow, but I managed to smile. "It was memorable. Is Robert in?" "No, he called in sick this morning. Said he'd be out for a few days." Of course he did. Robert was probably scrambling to figure out his next move, maybe even meeting with his own attorney. "Helen, I need you to pull all the financial records for the past year. Bank statements, expense reports, everything. There's going to be an audit." Helen's face went pale. "An audit? Is everything okay?" "Everything will be fine. Just get me those records by tomorrow morning." I spent the rest of the day at the office, reviewing contracts and client files. Our business was solid. We had a good reputation, steady clients, and skilled workers who'd been with us for years. It had taken 7 years of 18-hour days and reinvesting every profit, but we'd built something real and valuable. Robert might have betrayed our marriage, but I wouldn't let him destroy our business too. My phone buzzed with another text from him. "Where are you? We need to talk." I typed back, "I'm at the office working. You remember work, right? It's what pays for your girlfriend's lifestyle." The response came immediately, "Don't be vindictive, Zara. This is bigger than both of us now." "You're right," I replied. "It's much bigger. See you at home tonight." But when I got home that evening, Robert wasn't there. Instead, I found a note on the kitchen counter, "Gone to stay at a hotel while we both cool down. We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable." I crumpled up the note and threw it in the trash. Reasonable. He wanted me to be reasonable while he lived in a hotel room and his pregnant secretary planned their future with stolen money. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the living room, surrounded by the silence of the empty house. Tomorrow, Patricia would file the divorce papers. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. But tonight, for the first time in years, I was alone in my own home without having to pretend everything was okay. It felt like freedom. The next morning brought Patricia's call at 8 sharp. "The papers have been filed. Robert will be served at his hotel this afternoon." "How do you know where he's staying?" "I make it my business to know. He's at the Marriott downtown, probably close to his girlfriend's apartment. Speaking of which, we need to discuss the business aspect more thoroughly." I was already at the office, going through the financial records Helen had prepared. What I'd found made my stomach turn. "Patricia, it's worse than I thought." "Much worse." "How much worse?" I spread the bank statements across my desk. The $130,000 was just what I found in our personal email. There's more missing from business accounts. A lot more. "How much more?" "Try $300,000 over the past 18 months. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "Patricia? I'm here." "300,000, are you certain?" I stared at the highlighted entries Helen had helped me identify. Monthly transfers that didn't match any legitimate business expenses. Check authorizations Robert had handled personally. Petty cash withdrawals that added up to massive amounts. I'm looking at it right now. He's been stealing from the business almost since the affair started. New apartment for Melody, complete furniture package, a car, medical bills, clothes, jewelry. He even paid for a 2-week vacation to Hawaii that I thought was a business trip. "This changes everything," Patricia said grimly. "We're not just talking about embezzlement anymore. This is systematic theft on a scale that could destroy the business entirely." My hands shook as I flipped through more pages. "Patricia, some of these withdrawals are from payroll accounts. Money that should have gone to our workers' bonuses, their health insurance premiums. He stole from employee benefits? Thousands of dollars. Our guys have been working overtime on the Johnson project, expecting their performance bonuses at the end of the month. The money isn't there anymore." I felt sick. Our construction crews were hardworking men and women who depended on those bonuses to support their families. Robert had stolen their money to buy his pregnant girlfriend designer baby clothes. "Zara, I need you to secure all the business accounts immediately. Change every password, every authorization. Make sure he can't access anything else." "Already done. I spent half the night on it." "Good. We need to meet today. Can you be here by noon?" "I'll be there." But first I had another stop to make. I drove across town to the apartment complex where Melody lived, The one Robert had been paying for with stolen money. The building was expensive, the kind of place with a doorman and marble lobby that cost more per month than most of our workers made in 2 months. I didn't go up to her apartment. I didn't want to see her, didn't want to give her the satisfaction of thinking I was there to beg or threaten. Instead, I sat in my car across the street and called Patricia. I'm looking at Melody's building right now. This place costs at least $3,000 a month, plus parking, plus utilities. There's no way a secretary's salary covers this. That helps establish the pattern of theft. Anything else? Her car. I watched a woman who had to be Melody walk out of the building. She was small and blonde, everything I wasn't, with the kind of delicate beauty that made men want to protect her. She also drove a brand new BMW that I recognized from our business expense reports. Let me guess, company car? Supposedly for business development. She's 8 months pregnant and driving around in a $40,000 car that we're still making payments on. Patricia's laugh was sharp and cold. Your husband isn't just a cheater, Zara. He's an amateur criminal who kept excellent records of his own crimes. I watched Melody drive away, probably to another doctor's appointment or shopping trip funded by money stolen from my business. How bad is this going to get for him? Very bad. With this level of systematic theft, we're talking about multiple felony charges. He could face years in prison. The thought should have made me feel guilty. 3 days ago I'd loved this man. I'd built a life with him, trusted him with everything that mattered to me. But watching his pregnant girlfriend drive away in a car bought with stolen money, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. What's our next step? We document everything, secure all the assets we can, and prepare for war. Because when Robert realizes how much evidence we have, he's going to fight dirty. I started the car and pulled back into traffic. Let him fight. I'm not the same woman he married. At Patricia's office, we spread the financial evidence across a conference table. It painted a picture of systematic deception that took my breath away. Robert hadn't just stolen money, he'd created an entire false accounting system to hide what he was doing. Look at this, Patricia pointed to a series of entries. These are listed as equipment maintenance, but the money went straight to Melody's bank account. And these business lunches, 37 of them at the same expensive restaurant, always for exactly 2 people. I studied the dates. He was taking her there while telling me he was working late on proposals. The Hawaii trip he told you was for business? A client development opportunity that fell through at the last minute. He said the client decided to go with someone local. I looked at the airline records. 2 first-class tickets to Maui, 5-star resort, couples massage package. Patricia made notes on her legal pad. The prosecution is going to love this. It shows clear intent to defraud, sophisticated planning, and ongoing criminal behavior. Prosecution? Zara, this isn't just a civil matter anymore. With this much evidence of criminal activity, the state is going to want to press charges regardless of what you decide. My phone rang. Robert's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, Patricia said. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what he has to say now that he's been served. I swiped to accept the call. Hello, Robert. What the hell is this, Zara? His voice was tight with panic. Divorce papers? You couldn't even talk to me first. We talked 2 nights ago. You announced you were having another woman's baby and your mother called me barren. What else was there to discuss? This is insane. You're asking for the house, the business, everything. You can't just take half of what I've built. Patricia gestured for me to keep him talking. What you've built? I kept my voice calm. Robert, I've worked just as many hours as you for 7 years. I've earned half of everything we own. You think you can just destroy my life because your feelings are hurt? I think I can protect myself from a man who's been stealing from our business to support his pregnant girlfriend. Silence on the other end of the line. That's right, Robert. I know about all of it. Every stolen dollar, every fake expense report, every lie you told to cover it up. Zara, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You took over $300,000 from our business. Money that belonged to our employees, our clients, our future. You stole from people who trusted you. It's not stealing. It's our money, our business. Actually, it's evidence. Evidence I've turned over to the state attorney's office. Patricia smiled and gave me a thumbs up. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. When Robert finally spoke again, his voice was different. Smaller. You called the police? I called my attorney. She called the police. Zara, please. We can work this out. I'll pay the money back. Melody and I will figure something else out. But please don't do this. For a moment, I heard the man I'd married. The one who used to bring me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings, who'd held my hand during every doctor's appointment when we were trying to get pregnant. Then I remembered him standing in our dining room, smiling as he announced his secretary was carrying his child. It's too late for that, Robert. You should have thought about consequences before you decided to humiliate me in front of our friends and family. This will destroy me. You destroyed yourself. And you tried to destroy me too. I looked across the table at Patricia, who nodded encouragingly. The difference is I'm still standing. I hung up before he could respond. Patricia leaned back in her chair. How do you feel? Like I'm just getting started. 3 days later, I stood in the lobby of our bank at 9 in the morning, waiting for the manager to arrive. Patricia had coached me on exactly what to say and do. Today was the day we cut off Robert's access to everything. James Mitchell, our business account manager for 5 years, looked surprised to see me. Zara, how are you? Is Robert with you? No, James. That's actually why I'm here. I handed him the legal documents Patricia had prepared. I need to make some changes to our business accounts. James read through the papers, his expression growing more serious with each page. This is quite serious, Zara. These are criminal charges. Yes. Robert has been taking money from our business accounts without authorization. I need to protect the company and our employees. Of course. James gestured toward his office. Let's sit down and go through this properly. For the next 2 hours, we worked through every account, every authorization, every automatic payment. James was thorough and professional, but I could see the shock in his eyes as we documented the extent of Robert's theft. The good news is that most of the missing funds are traceable, James said as we finished. The bank records show exactly where every dollar went. That should help with recovery. Recovery? In criminal cases like this, the court often orders restitution. Assets can be seized, wages garnished, property sold to pay back what was stolen. I thought about Melody's expensive apartment and brand new BMW. What kind of assets? Anything purchased with stolen funds. Cars, jewelry, property, even gifts given to third parties. James looked uncomfortable. It can be extensive. By the time I left the bank, Robert had no access to any business funds, the company credit cards were canceled, and new accounts had been established in my name only. It felt like dismantling a life piece by piece. My phone rang as I walked to my car. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Zara Sterling? The voice was young, female, nervous. Yes. Who is this? This is Melody. I think we need to talk. I stopped walking. I don't think we have anything to discuss. Please. Just 5 minutes. I'm at the coffee shop on 3rd Street. The one near your office. I almost hung up. But something in her voice, desperation, maybe fear, made me hesitate. 5 minutes. The coffee shop was busy with the morning rush. I spotted Melody immediately, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a cup like she was trying to warm herself. Up close, she looked younger than I'd expected, maybe 25, with a kind of fragile beauty that would fade quickly under stress. She was very pregnant. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. I wasn't sure you would. I'm not sure why I did. I studied her face, looking for signs of the malicious homewrecker I'd imagined. Instead, I saw a scared girl who was in over her head. I heard about the charges. The police, the investigation. Melody's voice was barely above a whisper. Robert said you were trying to destroy him. Robert destroyed himself. I'm just refusing to go down with him. But what about me? What about the baby? Her hands moved protectively over her belly. We didn't know about the business money. Robert told me he had savings, that he'd been planning to leave you for months. I felt a familiar stab of pain but pushed it aside. What Robert told you isn't my problem. But it is. Melody leaned forward, tears starting to fall. Don't you see? If he goes to prison, I have nothing. No job, no money, no way to support this baby. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive him? For the baby's sake. I stared at her for a long moment. 3 days ago, I might have felt sympathy for her situation. But that was before I'd seen the financial records. Before I discovered how systematically Robert had betrayed not just me, but our employees and business partners. Melody, let me make something very clear to you. Robert didn't just cheat on his wife. He stole from a business that employs 12 people. He took money that was supposed to go to workers' bonuses, health insurance, equipment maintenance. He put everything we built at risk to fund your lifestyle. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You were happy to live in an expensive apartment and drive a luxury car as long as you could pretend the money came from somewhere legitimate. Melody's face crumpled. What am I supposed to do now? That's not my concern. I stood up to leave. You made your choices when you decided to get involved with a married man. Now you get to live with the consequences. Please, she called after me. I'm begging you. Have mercy. I turned back one last time. Robert showed me no mercy when he humiliated me in front of our friends and family. You showed me no mercy when you participated in stealing from my business. Why should I show you any now? I walked out of the coffee shop feeling strangely empty. Part of me had expected to feel satisfaction from seeing Melody's desperation, but instead I just felt tired. This whole situation was a waste of time, energy, relationships, trust. But I couldn't stop now. Too much was at stake. Back at the office, Helen was waiting with more documents. The police investigator called. Detective Rodriguez? He wants to meet with you this afternoon to go over the financial evidence. Did he say anything else? Just that they're moving fast on this case. Apparently, business embezzlement is a priority for them. I spent the rest of the morning calling our major clients, delicately explaining that there might be some personnel changes in the coming weeks but that all existing contracts would be honored. Most of them had worked with us long enough to trust that I could handle whatever was happening. The afternoon meeting with Detective Rodriguez was straightforward. He was a middle-aged man with tired eyes who clearly dealt with financial crimes regularly. Mrs. Sterling, I have to say, you've provided us with one of the most comprehensive evidence packages I've ever seen in a case like this. Your husband kept very detailed records of his own criminal activity. Is that unusual? More common than you'd think. People who commit financial crimes often believe they're smarter than everyone else. They document everything because they think they'll never get caught. Rodriguez flipped through the files. In this case, we have clear evidence of ongoing theft, systematic deception, and fraudulent reporting. This is a strong case. What happens next? We complete our investigation, present the case to the district attorney, and formal charges are filed. Given the amount of money involved and the systematic nature of the theft, we're looking at multiple felony counts. My phone buzzed. Another text from Robert. We need to talk. This has gone too far. I showed the message to Detective Rodriguez. He's been texting me constantly since he was served with the divorce papers. Document everything. Save all the messages. If he starts making threats or trying to intimidate you, call us immediately. That evening, I came home to find Robert's car in the driveway. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to walk calmly to the front door. He was sitting in the living room looking older than I'd ever seen him. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. How did you get in? I asked. It's still my house too, Zara. At least for now. Not for much longer. I set my purse down but remained standing. What do you want, Robert? I want my wife back. I want to fix this mess before it destroys everything we've built. We didn't build anything, Robert. You built a house of lies and theft. I just happened to be living in it. He stood up, moving closer to me. Don't be naive, Zara. You think you can run the business without me? You think you understand construction, contracts, client relationships. I think I understand them better than you gave me credit for. After all, I'm not the one who stole $300,000 and kept detailed records of it. Robert's mask of reasonableness finally slipped. You vindictive witch. You're going to destroy everything out of spite. I'm going to protect what's left out of necessity. There's a difference. The business will fail without me. The clients will leave, the workers will quit, the contracts will fall through. You'll be left with nothing. I walked to the front door and opened it. Then I'll build something new. Something honest. You can't throw away 7 years of marriage over one mistake. One mistake. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Robert, you had an affair for 8 months, got your secretary pregnant, stole hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then announced it all publicly to humiliate me. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of choices. Fine. You want to divorce me? Fine. But drop the criminal charges. Let's settle this between us. No. Zara, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. A reasonable person doesn't let someone steal from their business and face no consequences. Robert's face darkened. You have no idea what you're starting. I know where all the bodies are buried in this business. Every corner we cut, every regulation we bent, every client we overcharged. You think you're going to come out of this clean? The threat hung in the air between us. For a moment, I felt a flutter of the old fear, the uncertainty that had kept me quiet for so many years. Then I remembered the look on Melody's face when she begged me for mercy. The same mercy Robert had never shown me. Get out of my house, Robert. It's our house. Get out before I call the police and tell them you're here intimidating a witness in a criminal investigation. He stared at me for a long moment, probably looking for some sign of the woman who used to back down when he raised his voice. That woman was gone. This isn't over, he said finally. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. After he left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the quiet house, thinking about his threats. He was right that our business hadn't always operated perfectly. Construction was a complicated industry with endless regulations, and we'd occasionally cut corners to meet deadlines or budgets. But the difference was that those decisions had been made together, in the open, for the good of the business. Robert's theft had been secret, selfish, and ultimately destructive. I was no longer afraid of what he might reveal. After what he'd done, anything else felt manageable. Tomorrow I would start rebuilding. Not just the business but my entire life. And this time I would build it to last. The call came at 6 in the morning, jolting me from the first peaceful sleep I'd had in days. Zara, have you seen the news? Tanya's voice was tight with anger. What news? I stumbled to the kitchen and started the coffee maker, still half asleep. Channel 7. They're running a story about Robert's arrest. It's all over the local business section. My blood went cold. He was arrested? Last night. Apparently Detective Rodriguez decided they had enough evidence to move forward. But Zara, there's something else. They interviewed some of our clients. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the news station's website. The headline hit me like a physical blow. Local construction company owner arrested for embezzlement. Business future uncertain. The article was worse than I'd imagined. It detailed the charges against Robert, but it also questioned the stability of our company and raised doubts about our ability to complete existing contracts. Worse, it quoted several clients expressing concerns about the company's management and oversight. My phone started ringing immediately. First Helen, then our biggest client, then the bank manager, then reporters wanting comments. Each call brought worse news. Mrs. Sterling? This is Tom Johnson from Johnson Properties. We need to talk about our contract. Of course, Tom. I understand you might have concerns. Concerns? Zara, we trusted you and Robert with a $2 million project. Now we find out he's been stealing money and you didn't even know it? What else don't you know? Tom, I can assure you that all client funds are secure and the project is on schedule. We're pulling the contract. I'm sorry, but we can't risk it. The line went dead. 3 more clients called with similar messages. By noon, we'd lost nearly 60% of our current contracts. I sat in my office, staring at the cancellation emails piling up in my inbox, feeling the business I'd spent 7 years building crumble around me. Robert's parting threat echoed in my mind. The business will fail without me. Helen knocked on my door, her face grave. Zara, the crew chiefs want to meet with you. They're worried about their jobs. The conference room felt like a courtroom as I faced 12 of our best workers. These were men and women who'd been with us for years, who'd trusted us with their livelihoods, who'd given everything to build our reputation. We heard about the arrests, said Frank, our senior foreman. And about the clients pulling out. Are we going to have jobs next week? I looked around the table at faces I knew well. Frank had been with us since our 2nd year. Maria had worked her way up from apprentice to project manager. Jake had just bought his first house based on the steady income we provided. I won't lie to you, I said finally. We're facing challenges. Some clients are nervous about the situation with Robert. But this company is more than one person's mistakes. But what about the money he took? Asked Maria. The news said it was hundreds of thousands. What if we can't make payroll? Payroll is secure, I assured them, though privately I was doing rapid calculations in my head. Without the Johnson contract and the others we'd lost, cash flow would be tight within a month. What about our bonuses? This from Jake, who'd been counting on his performance bonus to finish paying for his house down payment. I felt sick remembering what I'd discovered about the bonus money Robert had stolen. I'm working on that. I promise you'll get what you're owed. Frank leaned forward. Zara, we respect you, but we also have families to feed. If this company is going under, we need to know now so we can find other work. The company is not going under. The words came out stronger than I felt. Yes, we've lost some contracts. Yes, we're dealing with challenges because of Robert's actions. But we still have good clients, ongoing projects, and the best crew in the city. What about Robert? Asked Maria. Is he coming back? No. Robert will never work for this company again. After the meeting, I called Patricia with the bad news about the lost contracts. This is exactly what Robert wanted, she said grimly. He's betting that public humiliation and business pressure will force you to drop the charges and take him back. Well, he's wrong. Are you sure? Because if you lose much more business, you might not have anything left to fight for. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before in 7 years of running the business. I put on my best suit, gathered every piece of positive documentation I could find, and started making cold calls. My first stop was Anderson Development, a company we'd pitched to unsuccessfully 2 years ago. The receptionist looked surprised to see me. "Mrs. Sterling? We heard about, well, the situation with your company. That's actually why I'm here. I'd like to speak with Mr. Anderson about new opportunities." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Robert Anderson himself, explaining how the upheaval at our company actually represented an opportunity for new partnerships. "Zara, I'm confused. Your husband just got arrested for stealing from your business, you've lost major contracts, and you're here looking for new work." "Mr. Anderson, my husband's actions don't reflect the quality of our work or the integrity of our team. If anything, his removal from the company allows us to operate with complete transparency and accountability." "But can you deliver? You've lost experienced management and major clients. Our crew is the same team that built the Preston Mall renovation, the Harbor District apartments, and the new school complex. Their skills haven't changed. If anything, they're more motivated now to prove what they can do." Anderson leaned back in his chair. "What kind of timeline are we talking about? We could start on your warehouse project next week if you're ready to move forward." It was a smaller contract than what we'd lost, but it was a start. Over the next 3 days, I pitched to 8 potential clients. I got rejections from 6 of them, but landed contracts with 2 enough to keep the crew working and cover immediate expenses. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Margaret Chin from Chin Industries called me directly. "Zara, I heard about your situation through the business network. I have a proposition for you." "I'm listening." "We've been looking for a construction partner for our new headquarters project. It's a big job, 12 months, $4 million. The company we were going to use just had their own financial troubles." My heart raced. "What would you need from us?" "Complete transparency. Open books, regular financial audits, progress reports, and a guarantee that you can deliver without the drama." "You'd have all of that and more. There's one more thing. We'd want you to testify at a construction industry ethics seminar about what happened with your business. Help other companies avoid similar situations." The idea of discussing Robert's betrayal publicly made my stomach turn, but I thought about Frank, Maria, Jake, and all the others depending on me. "I'll do it." That evening, I called an all-hands meeting with the crew. The conference room was packed with cautious faces. "I have news," I announced. "We just landed the Chin Industries headquarters project. $4 million, 12 months of steady work." The cheer that went up lifted my spirits for the first time in weeks. "There's more," I continued. "I've secured 2 additional contracts, and we have 3 more proposals pending. This company isn't just surviving, we're going to come out of this stronger than before." Frank stood up. "What about our bonuses? The ones that got taken?" I took a deep breath. "Every penny that was stolen from your bonuses will be repaid. It might take time, but you have my word." "How?" asked Jake. "Where's the money going to come from?" "From me personally if necessary. But more likely from the restitution when Robert's assets are seized and sold." After everyone left, I sat alone in the office, looking out at the empty parking lot. 3 weeks ago, I'd been the naive wife who believed her husband's lies and trusted him with everything. Tonight, I was the sole owner of a construction company with $4 million in new contracts and a crew that respected her leadership. Robert had tried to destroy me by taking away everything I'd built. Instead, he'd forced me to discover what I could build on my own. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news about the new contracts. Congratulations. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. Melody." Even Robert's pregnant girlfriend was reaching out to acknowledge my success. I deleted the message without responding. I was done with both of them. Tomorrow, I would start building the future I actually wanted instead of the one I'd settled for. 2 months later, I was reviewing contracts in my office when Helen knocked on the door with an expression I couldn't read. "Zara, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." "Who is it?" "Melody. Roberts, the secretary." I hadn't seen or heard from Melody since our brief coffee shop encounter. According to the court documents Patricia had shown me, the district attorney's office had seized most of the assets Robert had purchased with stolen money, including Melody's apartment lease and car. "Should I tell her you're not available?" Helen asked. "No. Send her in." But stay close in case I need you. Melody looked very different from the last time I'd seen her. Gone was the expensive maternity wear, replaced by a simple dress from a department store. Her hair was unwashed, her face pale and drawn. She was visibly more pregnant now, probably days away from giving birth. "Thank you for seeing me," she said quietly, settling carefully into the chair across from my desk. "What do you want, Melody?" I wanted to apologize. And to ask for your help. I set down my pen and really looked at her. The polished, confident woman who'd sat smiling in the corner during my anniversary dinner was gone. In her place was someone who looked broken and desperate. Apologize for what, exactly? For everything. For the affair, for taking the money, for what happened at your anniversary dinner. Her voice cracked. "I know you probably don't believe me, but I didn't know about the business money. Not at first." "When did you find out?" "About 6 weeks into the relationship. Robert showed me bank statements, said he'd been saving money to leave you for years. I believed him because I wanted to believe him." "And when you realized the truth?" Melody was quiet for a long moment. "I was already pregnant. Already living in the apartment he was paying for. Already in love with him, or what I thought was love." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I convinced myself it wasn't really stealing because you were married. That it was community property or something." "It wasn't community property. It was business money that belonged to our employees and clients. I know that now." Tears started falling. "Zara, I lost everything. The apartment, the car, my job. Robert's in jail awaiting trial, and his lawyer says he'll probably get 5 to 7 years. I'm 9 months pregnant with no money, no insurance, and no place to live." I felt nothing listening to her story. No satisfaction, no sympathy, just a cold emptiness where my emotions used to be. "What do you want from me?" "A job. Any job. I can answer phones, file papers, clean offices. I'll do anything. I just need enough money to support this baby." "You want me to give you a job? After you participated in stealing from my company?" "I know how it sounds, but I'm desperate. I've applied everywhere. As soon as potential employers find out who I am, what happened, they won't hire me." "And you think I will?" "I think you're the only person who might understand what it's like to be betrayed by Robert." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or calculation. Instead, I saw genuine desperation and fear. "Where are you living now?" "A women's shelter. They'll let me stay 2 weeks after the baby is born, then I have to find somewhere else." "What about family?" "My parents disowned me when they found out about the affair. My sister won't return my calls." Melody's hands rested on her belly. "I've made terrible mistakes, but this baby didn't do anything wrong. He deserves a chance." "It's a boy?" "Yes. Due any day now." I thought about my conversation with Robert the night he tried to threaten me. He'd been so confident that losing him would destroy me. Instead, I was thriving while everyone connected to him was falling apart. "Melody, I'm not going to give you a job." Her face crumpled. "Please, I'm begging you. I'm not going to give you a job because I don't trust you and I don't want you around my business. But I'm also not going to watch a baby suffer because of his parents' mistakes." I opened my desk drawer and pulled out my checkbook. "There's a women's resource center downtown that helps single mothers find housing and employment. I'm going to write them a check to cover 6 months of assistance for you and the baby." Melody stared at me in shock. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm not Robert. When I have the power to help someone, I use it responsibly." I wrote out the check for $5,000 and slid it across the desk. "This comes with conditions. You never contact me or anyone at this company again. You never mention my name in connection with this assistance. And you get counseling to figure out how you ended up making such destructive choices." Melody picked up the check with shaking hands. "I don't understand. After everything I did to you?" "You didn't do anything to me, Melody. You and Robert made choices that destroyed your own lives. I'm just choosing not to let those choices destroy an innocent baby." "Thank you," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve this." "You don't, but he does." I nodded toward her belly. "Use this chance to build something better. Don't waste it." After Melody left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about second chances and consequences. I'd given her money not out of forgiveness, but out of a recognition that revenge had its limits. Watching her suffer wouldn't undo what had happened or make me feel better. But it had shown me something important about who I was becoming. 3 months ago, I would have been too hurt and angry to help anyone connected to Robert. Today, I could separate the innocent from the guilty and act accordingly. Helen knocked again. "Zara? Detective Rodriguez is here. He says he has news about the case." Rodriguez came in with a thick folder and a satisfied expression. "Mrs. Sterling, I wanted to update you on the prosecution's case. We've recovered about 60% of the stolen funds through asset seizure and bank account freezes. What about the rest? Some of it was spent on non-recoverable items: vacations, restaurants, gifts. But the good news is that Robert's lawyer approached us about a plea deal." "What kind of plea deal?" 5 years in prison, full restitution of remaining funds, and permanent prohibition from working in financial management or business ownership." "Will he take it?" "His alternative is going to trial and potentially facing 10 to 15 years if convicted on all counts. His lawyer is recommending he take the deal." After Rodriguez left, I called Patricia to discuss the plea agreement. "It's a good deal for you," she said. "It guarantees restitution and puts him away long enough for you to fully establish your independence. The divorce will be finalized while he's in prison." "What about Melody? What about her? Will she face any charges?" "Unlikely. The prosecutor's office generally doesn't go after recipients of stolen funds unless they can prove active participation in the theft. Being a beneficiary isn't the same as being a co-conspirator." That evening, I drove to the construction site for our new Chin Industries project. The foundation had been poured and the frame was starting to take shape. Frank and his crew were working late, determined to stay ahead of schedule. "Looking good, boss," Frank called down from the scaffolding. "Boss." They'd started calling me that a month ago and it no longer felt strange. I stood there in the fading light, watching my team build something solid and permanent from nothing but raw materials and human skill. 6 months ago, I thought my life was about supporting Robert's ambitions and hopefully having his children someday. Now I was building something entirely my own. My phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan, the architect I'd been dating for 2 months. "Dinner tonight? I have news about the Morrison project." "Sounds perfect. Pick me up at 7? See you then." Jonathan was everything Robert wasn't: honest, supportive, genuinely interested in my opinions and dreams. He never made me feel like my role was to fade into the background of his larger ambitions. As I drove home, I passed the hotel where Robert was staying before his arrest. The building looked shabby and temporary, nothing like the solid, permanent structures we built. Robert had chosen temporary pleasures over lasting foundations. Now he was facing permanent consequences while I was building something that would endure. For the first time since that terrible anniversary dinner, I felt genuinely happy. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when I arrived for Robert's sentencing hearing. 6 months of legal proceedings had kept our story in the local news, turning my private humiliation into a public cautionary tale about infidelity and embezzlement. Patricia met me at the security checkpoint. "Ready for this?" "More than ready." The courtroom was packed. I recognized several of our former clients, some of our employees, and various business associates who'd followed the case. Robert's mother, Eleanor, sat in the front row on the defendant's side, glaring at me with open hatred. I took my seat behind the prosecutor's table and waited. When Robert was brought in wearing an orange jail jumpsuit, I was struck by how much he'd changed. The confident, well-dressed man who'd announced his affair at our anniversary dinner was gone. In his place was someone who looked older, smaller, defeated. He glanced back at me once, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before: genuine remorse mixed with fear. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the stolen bonus money that should have gone to Frank, Maria, and Jake. Judge Harrison called the court to order. "We're here today for the sentencing of Robert Sterling, who has entered a guilty plea to multiple counts of embezzlement, fraud, and theft. Before I pronounce sentence, I'll hear victim impact statements." I'd prepared my statement carefully with Patricia's help. When my name was called, I walked to the podium and looked out at the packed courtroom. "Your Honor, Robert Sterling didn't just steal money from our business. He stole the foundation of trust that every successful company is built on. Our employees worked overtime believing they would receive the bonuses he had already spent on his girlfriend. Our clients trusted us with their projects while he was secretly draining the accounts meant to fund their construction." I paused, looking directly at Robert. He couldn't meet my eyes. But more than that, he attempted to use public humiliation as a weapon to destroy my ability to fight back. He calculated that embarrassing me in front of our friends and family would leave me powerless to defend myself or our business. He was wrong. In the 6 months since his arrest, our company has not only survived but thrived. We've secured major new contracts, maintained our reputation for quality work, and rebuilt the financial stability he tried to destroy. Our employees have received their stolen bonuses, our clients have seen their projects completed on time and under budget. I could see Eleanor shifting uncomfortably in her seat. Your Honor, I don't ask for vengeance. I ask for justice. Robert Sterling made calculated choices to betray the trust of everyone who depended on him. Those choices deserve proportional consequences. When I returned to my seat, several of our employees gave their own statements. Frank talked about the financial stress his family faced when their expected bonus didn't materialize. Maria described the humiliation of having clients question her competence because of Robert's crimes. By the time they finished, Robert was staring at his hands, unable to look at anyone. His lawyer made a brief plea for leniency, emphasizing Robert's lack of prior criminal record and his genuine remorse for his actions. It felt perfunctory, like going through the motions of a defense everyone knew was hopeless. Finally, Judge Harrison asked if Robert wanted to make a statement before sentencing. Robert stood slowly, his voice barely audible. Your Honor, I want to apologize to everyone I hurt. To my employees, my clients, and especially to my wife Zara. I made terrible choices that destroyed everything good in my life. He turned to look at me directly. Zara, I know I can never undo what I did to you, to us, to the business we built together. I was selfish and cruel, and I have no excuse for any of it. His voice cracked. I hope someday you can forgive me even though I don't deserve it. Judge Harrison studied the case file for several minutes before speaking. Mr. Sterling, you held a position of trust in your community and your family. You chose to abuse that trust systematically over many months, stealing not just money but hope, security, and dignity from the people who depended on you. The court sentences you to 5 years in state prison with possibility of parole after 3 years. You will make full restitution of all stolen funds, and you are permanently barred from any position involving financial management or business ownership. The gavel came down with finality. Robert's shoulders sagged as the bailiff approached to lead him away. As he passed my row, he stopped and looked at me one more time. I'm sorry, he mouthed silently. I nodded once, not in forgiveness but in acknowledgement that this chapter was finally closed. Outside the courthouse, reporters pressed microphones toward me, asking for statements about justice and closure. Patricia handled most of the questions while I stood quietly, feeling strangely empty. How does it feel to see your ex-husband sentenced to prison? One reporter called out. I thought about it for a moment. It feels like the end of something that should have ended a long time ago. That evening, Jonathan took me to dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the harbor. We'd been dating for 4 months now, and he'd been patient with my need to focus on the business and legal proceedings. So it's really over? He asked over wine. The criminal case is over. The divorce will be finalized next month. And how do you feel? Relieved. Exhausted. Ready to move forward. Jonathan reached across the table to take my hand. I have something to tell you. The Morrison project I've been working on? The client wants to use your company for the construction. I looked up, surprised. That's a $15 million project. I know. It would be the biggest contract you've ever landed. Jonathan, I hope you didn't influence their decision because we're dating. I didn't have to. Your reputation speaks for itself. They specifically asked for the company that came through the Sterling scandal stronger than before. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely excited about the future. Not just surviving or rebuilding, but actually growing beyond anything Robert and I had achieved together. There's something else, Jonathan continued. Something personal. My heart skipped. Oh. I've been offered a position with a firm in Seattle. A partnership track that would set up my career for the next decade. My excitement dimmed. That's wonderful for you. I turned it down. What? Why? Because I'd rather build something here. With you. If you're interested. I stared at him across the candlelit table, this man who'd chosen me over career advancement, who'd supported me through the darkest period of my life without trying to fix or control anything. Jonathan, I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I just wanted you to know that I'm invested in whatever we're building together. 6 months ago, my husband had announced he was having another woman's baby. Tonight, a man I was falling in love with was choosing to stay in my city to build a life with me. The contrast was so stark it almost made me laugh. As we walked back to his car, Jonathan stopped suddenly. Look up. The first stars were appearing in the clear night sky, bright points of light against the darkness. Make a wish, he said softly. I closed my eyes and thought about wishes and dreams and second chances. 6 months ago, I would have wished for Robert to come back to me, for our marriage to work, for everything to go back to the way it was. Tonight, I wished for the courage to keep building the life I was creating, one honest decision at a time. When I opened my eyes, Jonathan was watching me with a gentle smile. What did you wish for? He asked. More of this, I said simply. More of right now. 1 year after the anniversary dinner that changed everything, I stood in the conference room of our expanded office, looking out at a business that barely resembled the company Robert and I had started 7 years earlier. Where we'd once employed 12 people, we now had 28. Where we'd once operated out of a small building with outdated equipment, we now occupied a modern facility with state-of-the-art technology. Where we'd once competed for contracts, clients now sought us out specifically for our reputation of integrity and excellence. The Morrison project is ahead of schedule and under budget, Frank reported during our weekly management meeting. The client is so happy they're already talking about their next development. That's the third project this month to finish early, added Maria, who'd been promoted to operations manager. The crew is really hitting their stride. I looked around the table at faces that had become more than employees, they were partners in building something meaningful. When Robert was arrested, many of them could have left for more stable companies. Instead, they'd chosen to stay and help prove that our business was about more than one person's leadership. Any word on the Patterson contract? Asked Jake, now our lead project supervisor. We find out next week, but I'm optimistic. They specifically mentioned our ethical business practices as a deciding factor. After the meeting, I returned to my office to find Helen waiting with a stack of messages and a familiar expression. Let me guess, I said. More interview requests? 3 reporters, a business magazine, and someone from a documentary crew about white-collar crime. Over the past year, our story had become a case study in business recovery and personal resilience. I'd spoken at conferences, been featured in articles about women in construction, and even testified before a state legislative committee about strengthening oversight of business finances. Schedule the magazine interview for next week, I told Helen. But pass on the documentary. I think I've shared enough of my story for now. What I didn't tell Helen was that I'd received a letter from Robert the day before. His first communication since the sentencing 6 months earlier. The letter was brief and carefully written, probably reviewed by his lawyer. He congratulated me on the business success, acknowledged that I'd exceeded everyone's expectations, and asked if I might consider visiting him in prison. I'd read it once and filed it away. Not out of anger anymore, but out of indifference. That chapter of my life was closed and I had no interest in reopening it. My phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan. Dinner at 7? I have something to show you. Sounds mysterious. I'll be there. Jonathan and I had been living together for 3 months now, in a house we'd bought together just outside the city. It was nothing like the showcase home Robert and I had shared. Instead, it was warm, comfortable, and filled with evidence of a life we were building together rather than performing for others. When I arrived home that evening, Jonathan was in the kitchen, cooking and humming along to music. The sight of him moving confidently around our kitchen, completely unself-conscious and genuinely happy, still sometimes took my breath away. Smells amazing, I said, kissing his cheek. What's the mystery? Patience. First, tell me about your day. Over dinner, I updated him on the Patterson contract bid and the latest employee promotions. Jonathan listened with the kind of attention Robert had never given my work, genuine interest in the details, thoughtful questions about challenges, celebration of successes. I'm proud of you, he said when I finished. Not just for what you've accomplished, but for how you've handled everything. It's been a team effort. No, Zara. Leadership is individual. You chose to fight instead of giving up. You chose to rebuild instead of just surviving. You chose to create something better instead of just replacing what was lost. After dinner, Jonathan led me to his home office. On his drafting table was a detailed architectural drawing of a building I didn't recognize. What's this? The new Women's Resource Center downtown. The one you've been donating to? They got a grant for a permanent facility, and they asked me to design it. I studied the plans. It was beautiful, modern but welcoming, with spaces for childcare, job training, counseling, and temporary housing. It's wonderful, Jonathan. They're lucky to have you designing it. There's more. He pointed to a small plaque shown in the lobby area. They want to name the childcare center after you. The Zara Sterling Children's Wing. I stared at the drawing, overwhelmed. I don't understand. I just wrote a few checks. You've donated over $50,000 in the past year. But more than that, you've shown up. You volunteer at their job training workshops, you've helped 3 women find employment with your contractors, and you personally mentored 2 single mothers through starting their own businesses. I didn't do it for recognition. That's exactly why they want to recognize you. I traced the outline of the children's wing with my finger, thinking about Melody and her baby, who would be 6 months old now. I'd kept my word about not contacting her, but I'd heard through the resource center staff that she'd found stable housing and was working part-time while going to community college. There's something else, Jonathan continued. The board wants you to consider joining as a member. They think your business experience and personal story would help them expand their services. I looked up at him. You've been planning this for a while, haven't you? What? I wanted to surprise you with something that shows how much impact you've had, not just on your own life but on other people's lives too. That night, I lay awake thinking about impact and legacy and the unexpected directions life could take. 2 years ago, my biggest worry was whether Robert and I would ever have children. Now I was helping dozens of women and children through the most difficult periods of their lives. The irony wasn't lost on me. Robert had called me barren in front of our friends and family. Now I was nurturing growth and possibility in ways I'd never imagined. My phone lit up with a midnight text from an unknown number. Saw the news about the children's wing. You always were better than all of us. Congratulations. Eleanor, Robert's mother. The woman who'd smiled when she called me barren was now acknowledging my success. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without response. Some people deserved forgiveness. Others just deserved to be forgotten. The next morning brought news that we'd won the Patterson contract, a $12 million mixed-use development that would employ our crew for 18 months. Frank hooped when I announced it at the daily meeting, and the enthusiasm spread through the entire team. This calls for a celebration, Maria announced. Company party Friday night? Sounds perfect, but let's make it a double celebration. We're also announcing the new profit-sharing program. I'd been working with our accountant for months to restructure the business so that every employee had a stake in our success. It was something Robert would never have considered. He'd always viewed workers as expenses rather than investments. That afternoon, I was reviewing the profit-sharing paperwork when Helen knocked on my door. Zara, there's someone here to see you. She says it's personal. My heart sank, expecting to see Melody again. Instead, a woman I didn't recognize stood in my doorway, middle-aged, well-dressed, with kind but tired eyes. Mrs. Sterling? I'm Janet Morrison. I think you knew my daughter. Rebecca Morrison? I searched my memory, then placed the name. Rebecca had been one of the single mothers I'd mentored through the resource center. She'd started a small catering business with a microloan and had been doing well until... I'm so sorry for your loss, I said quietly. Rebecca had been killed by a drunk driver 3 months earlier, leaving behind a 6-year-old daughter. Thank you. That's actually why I'm here. Janet sat down carefully. Rebecca talked about you constantly. How you helped her believe she could run her own business, how you connected her with clients, how you showed her that making mistakes didn't mean she was a failure. I felt tears prick my eyes. Rebecca was remarkable. She worked harder than anyone I've ever met. She left something for you. A letter she wrote but never sent, along with something else. Janet handed me an envelope with my name written in Rebecca's careful handwriting. Inside was a brief note and a small savings account book. Zara, the letter read, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I want you to know that you saved my life in every way that matters. When I met you, I was convinced I was worthless, that all my mistakes meant I'd never amount to anything. You showed me that my past didn't have to define my future. I've been saving money to start a scholarship fund for other single mothers who want to start businesses. There's $8,000 in the account. I want you to have it, not for yourself, but to help other women the way you helped me. Make something good grow from this. Thank you for showing me I was worth investing in. Please tell my daughter Emma that her mama was building something bigger than herself. With love and gratitude, Rebecca. I sat in my office for a long time after Janet left, holding Rebecca's letter and thinking about the ripple effects of kindness and cruelty. Robert had tried to destroy me, and in failing, he'd accidentally set me free to become someone who could make a real difference. Rebecca had died tragically young, but her legacy would live on in the women her scholarship fund would help. And I was building something that would outlast all of us, not just a business, but a community of people committed to lifting each other up instead of tearing each other down. That evening, I called an emergency board meeting at the resource center. By the end of the week, the Rebecca Morrison Scholarship Fund was established, with matching funds from my company and pledges from several other local businesses. As I drove home that night, I passed the hotel where Robert had stayed after his arrest. It had been demolished and replaced with a small park where families brought their children to play. Everything temporary had been swept away. Only the things built on solid foundations remained. 2 years to the day after Robert's devastating anniversary announcement, I stood in the ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel, surrounded by 300 guests celebrating the grand opening of Sterling Construction's new headquarters. The irony of the timing wasn't lost on me. What had begun as the worst night of my life had become the foundation for everything good that followed. Ladies and gentlemen, the master of ceremonies announced, "Please welcome the founder and CEO of Sterling Construction, Zara Sterling." The applause was thunderous as I walked to the podium. I looked out at faces that had become dear to me over the past 2 years, my employees and their families, clients who'd become friends, community leaders, and women from the resource center whose lives had intersected with mine in meaningful ways. Near the front, Jonathan stood with a proud smile, wearing the engagement ring I'd given him just 3 weeks earlier. Yes, I'd proposed to him in the middle of a construction site, wearing steel-toed boots and a hard hat. He'd said yes before I'd finished asking. 2 years ago I thought I knew what success looked like. I began. A profitable business, a stable marriage, a comfortable life where everything went according to plan. I paused, remembering the woman I'd been then, trusting, naive, willing to accept whatever role others assigned her. What I learned is that real success isn't about avoiding failure or betrayal or loss. It's about what you build after everything falls apart. I gestured to Frank, Maria, Jake, and the rest of my team. These people took a chance on a company in crisis and helped build something stronger than what came before. We've completed over 50 projects, employed dozens of families, and proved that integrity isn't just good ethics, it's good business. The applause interrupted me and I waited for it to die down. But tonight isn't just about celebrating our business success. It's about celebrating the power of second chances and the importance of lifting each other up. I looked toward the back of the room where several women from the resource center sat with their children. Some of them were now successful entrepreneurs themselves. When life tears down what you thought was permanent, you have a choice. You can spend your energy trying to rebuild exactly what you lost, or you can use the cleared ground to construct something better. I was halfway through my speech when I noticed a disturbance near the ballroom entrance. Security guards were speaking quietly with someone trying to enter. My stomach tightened as I recognized the figure Robert, thinner and grayer than when I'd last seen him, wearing an ill-fitting suit and looking desperate. He'd been released on parole 6 months early for good behavior. The security guards looked to me for direction. The entire ballroom had turned to see what was happening. Conversations stopped and tension filled the air. I had 2 choices. I could have him removed, which would cause a scene and give him the dramatic confrontation he probably wanted. Or I could handle this the way I'd learned to handle everything else, with calm professionalism. "It's all right," I said into the microphone. "Let him in." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Robert walked slowly toward the front of the room. He looked smaller than I remembered, diminished by prison and the consequences of his choices. When he reached the area near the podium, he stopped and looked up at me. "Hello, Zara." "Robert." I kept my voice neutral. "This is a private event." "I know. I wanted to see what you'd built. To congratulate you." The ballroom was silent except for the clink of glasses as people set down their drinks to watch this unexpected drama unfold. "I read about the contracts, the awards, the community work. You exceeded everyone's expectations." "I exceeded your expectations," I corrected. "Most people always believed I was capable of more than you gave me credit for." Robert's face flushed. "You're right. I was wrong about a lot of things." He looked around the ballroom, taking in the elegant decorations, the successful people, the obvious prosperity. "I also came to ask if there might be a place for me in what you've built. I know I don't deserve it, but I've learned from my mistakes. I could start at the bottom, prove myself again." The audacity of the request took my breath away. After everything he'd done, the theft, the betrayal, the public humiliation, he thought he could walk back into my life and ask for a job. I looked out at my team, my friends, my community. These people had worked hard to build something clean and honest and good. They deserved better than having to work alongside the man who'd nearly destroyed it all. "Robert," I said quietly, "I want you to look around this room. Really look." He turned slowly, scanning the faces of people who'd once respected him and now regarded him with everything from disgust to pity. "These people trusted you once. They worked for you, did business with you, considered you a friend. You stole from them, lied to them, and tried to destroy the company they'd helped build." I stepped closer to the edge of the stage, looking down at him. "Did you really think you could walk in here tonight and ask to be part of what we've created without you? I hoped, that you might have forgiven me. Forgiveness isn't the same thing as trust, Robert. And trust, once broken completely, can't be rebuilt." I gestured to Jonathan, to my employees, to the community leaders in the audience. "These people have earned their places here through honesty, hard work, and loyalty. You forfeited your place when you chose to steal and betray and humiliate." Robert's shoulders sagged. "So there's nothing? No possibility of redemption?" Your redemption isn't my responsibility. It's yours. You'll have to build that somewhere else, with people who didn't watch you destroy everything you claim to care about. I returned to the microphone, addressing the full room again. Ladies and gentlemen, this seems like an appropriate moment to talk about the difference between consequences and cruelty. Robert Sterling will live with the consequences of his choices for the rest of his life. That's not cruelty, that's justice. I looked back at Robert one final time. I wish you well in whatever you build next. But you won't be building it here. Security guard stepped forward, not roughly but firmly, to escort Robert out. As he reached the ballroom doors, he turned back. I'm sorry, Zara. For everything. I know you are, I replied. But sorry doesn't rebuild what you tore down. After he left, the ballroom remained quiet for several moments. Then Frank started clapping, slowly at first, then joined by Maria, Jake, and the rest of my team. The applause built until the entire room was standing, not just for me but for the principle that actions have consequences and that some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Where was I? I asked, returning to my speech notes. Someone in the audience called out, "You were talking about building something better." Right. Building something better. I looked out at Jonathan, whose eyes were bright with pride and love. I thought about Rebecca's scholarship fund, which had already helped a dozen women start their own businesses. I thought about the Resource Center's new facility, where children played safely while their mothers learned new skills. I thought about Frank's promotion to partner, Maria's success as operations manager, and Jake's decision to start his own contracting business with our mentorship. 2 years ago, a man stood up at our anniversary dinner and tried to humiliate me into accepting the scraps of a life he was willing to offer. He thought public shame would make me powerless. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. He was wrong about that too. The celebration continued until past midnight. As guests gradually departed, I found myself standing on the hotel's terrace with Jonathan, looking out over the city lights. "How do you feel?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Complete," I said simply. "For the first time in my adult life, I feel complete." "Any regrets?" I thought about the question seriously. Did I regret the pain, the betrayal, the months of uncertainty and struggle? I regret that it happened the way it did. I regret that people got hurt. But I don't regret where it led. Even if you could go back and prevent Robert's affair, keep your marriage intact, avoid all the trauma? You mean go back to being the woman who accepted whatever role she was assigned? Who never discovered what she was capable of building on her own? I shook my head. That woman was half asleep. I wouldn't trade who I am now for who I was then. Jonathan was quiet for a moment. "What do you think Robert will do now?" "I don't know. And for the first time in 7 years, I don't care." We stood in comfortable silence, watching the city settle into sleep. Somewhere out there, Robert was probably in a cheap hotel room, wondering how his grand gesture had gone so wrong. Somewhere else, Melody was likely putting her toddler to bed in whatever life she'd managed to build from the ruins of her poor choices. But here, on this terrace, surrounded by the evidence of what could be built with honesty and determination and the support of good people, I felt nothing but gratitude for the journey that had brought me to this moment. "Ready to go home?" Jonathan asked. "More than ready." As we drove through the quiet streets toward our house, I thought about homes and foundations and the difference between structures that merely stood and structures that could weather any storm. 2 years ago, Robert had tried to demolish everything I thought was solid in my life. Instead, he'd cleared the ground for me to build something unshakable. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new opportunities to help and be helped. But tonight, I was going home to the life I'd consciously chosen, with a man who'd chosen me in return, surrounded by work that mattered and relationships built on truth. Robert had given me the greatest gift imaginable, though he'd never understand it. He'd set me free to become who I was always meant to be.